5 tube amplifier myths. So we're going from 5 to number 1. Of course, I'm standing here in front of my MC13S, which I still find such a gorgeous piece of equipment. I love this amplifier. With every single time that I put this thing on, it just tickles my ears. Um, Excusez-moi. Let's go into this. 5. Solid state has completely surpassed tubes. If that were true, companies wouldn't still be designing and selling world-class tube amplifiers today. Tubes and solid state simply offer different strengths. Neither technology is inherently superior. Execution is what matters. Now, with that, I have to say, technically, they are wrong with this one. Technically, solid state is better. We know that. That's been a proven fact. Solid state has just way more advantages over tube, and technology-wise, it is superior. However, I do agree with the fact that sonically, I feel that people have a very misconstrued concept of how tubes sound like. They really think about a rolled off, very woolly Seaberg jukebox type of sound. That's not what tubes do. Tubes sound just as clean, just as distortion free as solid states within their operational, specifications. So no, I don't agree with number 5 completely. Number 4, tube amps require constant tube replacements. Another myth. Most power tubes last thousands of hours, and preamp tubes often last for many years. For the average listener, tube replacement is an occasional maintenance item, not a constant expense. That much is true. However, it also depends on how you bias these output tubes. Now, these tubes, they can last probably 10 years. Now, that all depends on how you bias them. Some people have this tube fanatics. They tend to bias them pretty high. So the higher the voltage is, the more you go towards a Class A operation of the tubes. So you get more of a Class A topology, type of sound. The problem is you're basically really running your tubes quicker into the ground. I tend to stay within the spec. Now here you see the spec on 0.35 to 0.4 volts, right? Now, here's the thing. This is a KT77, so I'm running them a little bit different than I would my EL34s, which this spec is, there for. But I tend to run my tubes on the colder side, as they call that, so I get more life out of them. It is true, though. It's nothing like, after 5 or 6 or 10 sessions, I have to rebias this thing. I have to. Some people hyper-focus on that. You shouldn't be worrying about that. This here, anywhere between these two numbers, if you have an EL34 in here, it's perfectly fine. It's not an exact number. It's an operating range. And that's also, I feel that some tube guys do wrong. They go exactly for that 0.34 or 35 voltage. You don't have to do that. It's absolutely unnecessary. There's no sonic difference between this tube running on 0.35 and that on 0.37. It's not gonna do anything crazy. So there you go. Number 3, tube amplifiers color the sound too much. No, I don't agree with that either, but here it says some do, many don't. Modern tube amplifiers can measure extremely well and sound surprisingly neutral. The circuit design matters far more than the presence of tubes, and that is true. Also, I would argue that the output tubes have a certain specification. All these specs are pretty much well documented about tubes. These tubes supposed to just amplify. Where your characteristic comes from usually is the output transformers for the left and right channels. So for people who don't know what this is the power supply, and this is the output transformer for the right and the left channel. So this is where you get your dynamics, your control, your stability, everything from. This is where the character gets determined for tube amplifiers. That's also why very high-end tube amplifiers are super expensive. Although today, I would argue, you're looking at it, it's very possible with a lower budget. We've kind of figured out how to manufacture this in a proper way, and this is definitely one of those amps that I would put in that list of being really good. Let's see. Then we have number 2. Tube amps can drive real speakers. That's, it says here, not true. Tube amplifiers work exceptionally well with efficient speakers Problems usually arise when people pair lower power tube amplifiers with low sensitivity, difficult loads like magnet pens or other current hungry speakers. That is absolutely true, and we've actually done that with this particular amplifier as well. I had magnet pens LRSs on here. Within 5 minutes, not gonna work. NHTs, not gonna work. And the reason why was all 83, 84 dB loudspeakers, they just do not pair well with this. This needs a better pairing. This has to do, and it relates to damping factor as well. Tube amplifiers do have a less control over woofers than a solid state does. The solid state is a little bit more of a jack of all trades, where tube amplifiers are a little bit more critical on the damping factor. So if you have a higher sensitivity speaker, something like my Energy CF70, which is a 96 dB loudspeaker, and my Klipsch 5.5, which is a 98 dB loudspeaker, it just can make it sing easily. It's no problem. The amplifier is not struggling. It doesn't have to pour tons of power into it. You don't have to crank it so high, and it runs absolutely beautiful. So it is a misconception about tube amplifiers that I hear a lot, like, oh, well, I had these speakers on and it sounds like shit. This amp sounds like shit. No, it's because you put something on there that is not matching what this amp can do, right? If you have a lower sensitivity speaker, don't even start with infinities like a capo or something. You don't want to put that on like an amplifier like this. It's not gonna work well. So that makes sense. Then number one, tube amplifiers are slow and have weak bass. False. Bass quality is determined by the amplifier design, output transformers, power supply, and speaker matching. A well-designed tube amp can produce bass that is deep, fast, and controlled. That much is also true, and it also relates to the sensitivity of the loudspeaker. If you have a loudspeaker that this particular amplifier can run really well, then you have no issues there either. It's no different from a solid state. There is no higher distortion levels. There is no so-called rolled off upper end or anything. These things can run anything just as well as a solid state does. Matter of fact, I would even argue if I put these particular loudspeakers that I have here on a normal solid state with similar power numbers, that you wouldn't even hear a real difference between the two of them. I can say that because I think that's really how it is. Blind testing, you guys, controlled listening testing. I know that a lot of people out there, they're like, oh, it's all bullshit. No, it's not. It's just showing that you're full of shit and you don't like that. That's the whole problem. But I'm the type of guy, I'm just being honest, it would be hard to pick out, at one point, given fact that it's matched up to something like this, it's very hard to pick out that particular amplifier at that point. So there you go, you guys. 8 minutes in. I thought, I want to give you a little list of myths and bullshit. I might do another list of this. As you can tell, my MC13S, love this fucking amplifier. It's still one of my most favorite prized possessions and one of the cheapest ones too. And I'm going back to listening to some Kraftwerk